welcome to my first look at the Zeus Mk2 ES and the Zeus Mk2 CL. These are two hotly desired ships that are coming soon to StarCitizen, and hopefully will be in testing very, very soon, making this video obsolete, but that's what it is. Thank you to my long-term subscribers for sticking through it with me. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already. So, when we're talking about the Zeus in general, we have to consider the fact that it's a crew 3 ship, so 3 crew on board. Really, does that mean 2 to 3? I want to make sure I start with that because, plain and simple, many backers tend to forget that these are multi crew vessels. And that means that if you have at least one of your friends or org mates on board, they aren't able to fly another ship. So, what do these ships bring that makes the value? Well, for starters, they're made by a team that just finished up the cutters. And if you've seen the cutters, you've already know they are fantastic vessels. And I think that they are something to be said when it comes to a multi-crew vessel, that they will feel very well finished and they will be ready for all the latest ship features coming in, including engineering, including all the different services available to crews. Now, with that out of the way, I want to talk about the comparison between the two vessels. The CL is the hauling version, and that it features a 128 SCU cargo. It has a tractor beam that is on an arm, and it is technically a medium freight vessel. And that means that it is a direct competitor to ships like the Connie Taurus and other haulers that are kind of hitting that mid range, and you may not want a bigger ship that you have to haul around. Your budget for your fleet may not justify a larger hauler, or you just like that style of ship. This is a very approachable vessel where you have a ladder towards the front bottom of the vessel that you can kind of just climb in and get right to the bridge and go. Whereas something, for example, like much larger, like a Hercules series ship, you have to go through, okay, now we need to get on an elevator or climb the ladder, and we have to go up to a second floor, go through multiple doors, and now we're finally at the bridge. So you're talking about a different type of ship. Another ship that comes to mind is the Lancer Max, which is, while it's a smaller ship, it is worth mentioning that it is kind of in that feel for me. It's like a bigger Lancer Max, is really what I'm seeing. I like that the cargo tractor beam to handle your cargo is retracted and away from the ship, put away and not going to get damaged or knocked around when you don't need it. And it does seem to have the same kind of capability as the recent Spirit series of ships like the C1, where you enjoyed the tractor beam that was able to face outwards as well as look inwards. Now, this one is not on some big rail system like that one, but it does have the ability, it appears, to face outwards and inwards, and that is a very well placed tractor beam on a modern ship. Now, I want to mention that it's not fair to compare older ships directly to the Zeuses, as these are brand new. Other ships will get passes. So I caution people who are really looking at a CCU and thinking, oh, I'm going to grab this and go, especially on the haulers. The Lancer series will get reworked. The Connie series will get reworked. There will be passes on these ships. There will be new haulers. I'm thinking of the Raelin is waiting in the wings somewhere out there in the distance. So there's a lot of options. So be sure to do your research. Consider if this is the right size cargo for what you want to do in this game before you kind of lock yourself to this size of ship. And I wanted to start with the hauler after talking about the multi-crew aspect of all of these vessels, because I feel like that's the one out of these two, at least, these two ships, that is going to be the most uh, prone to be a mistake if you CCU to it and you kind of break away from a different hauler, and then you find yourself, do I really need all these crew services on board? And I'm going to go into those when I talk about the ES just now. Overall, these animations showing the smaller amount of cargo that was at the beginning of that, and also this moved wall showing the CL losing space in its crew quarters versus the ES's that has larger crew quarter services areas, explain a lot to me about what the difference is. So if you don't need that amount of space for SCUs of storage, so you could go down to 32 SCU of cargo, then the ES is highly likely for you. You're not dealing with having the tractor beam, that is a downside. However, you gain a very, very well suited ship for longer term operations for 2 to 3 crew. And you also have additional ability to have, I would say, staying power. And what do I mean by that? So, with the ES in general, you're talking about a site that has additional suit lockers, and it has the ability to have larger fuel tanks. So, why are suit lockers important? The ability to have 3 suit lockers, so one for each crew, or if you're on a 2-person crew, you could have a hazmat suit and a regular combat suit or utility suit that is not for hazmat on a crew, uh, is very useful because you could run up, grab the gear, and go. Whereas on the CL, there is none of that capability. Additionally, having a larger fuel tank will be very useful in larger expansed areas like Pyro. While the system has been nerfed since the original scope of being multiple times the size of Stanton, it is still a place where you may not have a safe refueling site that is close. So if you're exploring out there in the verse, or you're even using this thing for combat in a small gang or something like that, you're going to enjoy the fact you have a much larger fuel tank. A simple size increase on that fuel tank can mean an immense amount of additional range depending on the type of systems you are using to fly around with. So, the type of modules you're using. So, I would say that in general, the ES has its place. There is the another rumored variant that was accidentally released as a fourth variant for the Zeus uh, by official social media sites for CIG. However, we don't know if that's ever going to be a thing. The Zeus ST, this maybe the luxury variant or racing, widely speculated about what they meant by that. The name status is not an official name, but ST was a variant with a picture I am not going to put here, but it is a thing. Look it up. Who knows if it's ever going to come back? So the nearest competitor doesn't exist compared to the ST to the ES. So if you were on the fence about these type of ships and you want to try a Zeus, the ES is probably the most all-arounder, and it has a very fair price for what it can do. I would say that the CL is the more extreme variant of the three because it is locking you into hauling classification. However, that tractor beam does add an immense amount of utility, such as gathering things from a wreck or something like that. It will be much easier without having to risk your crew and having to go outside. That's kind of where I'm at with both of them. Now, there is the elephant in the room. There is a third official variant that is not coming out, apparently, in 3.24.2 or one of the 3.24.x patches, because they have not. It's kind of being put on 3.24.2. Who knows, though? That's the way it is with testing. They could put it into the PTU and it doesn't work, and something is really wrong with it and needs more time. But the signs are pointing towards 3.24.2 being when these two will come out. The third ship is not coming out soon. That is the Zeus Mk2 MR, so the Marquise, if you will, which is the bounty hunter version of it, or I would argue a heavier mantis. I'm using that exact term because there is no ship quite like this. Now, it does not have a snare, like the Mantis, but it does have the quantum dampening array combined with an EMP. Another ship that many are comparing it to is the Cutty Blue. So the Cutlass Blue enjoys that quantum dampener and EMPs and everything to shut things down. But this is a larger ship and it's more modern, and its combat arrangement may not turn PvPers' heads too much, but I think they're not really looking at the right things. This thing still has size 2 fuel tanks and 3 size 2 shields and a size 2 radar on board. It is not as squishy as a Mantis. It doesn't need to be massively stocked up with weaponry. And it still has 16 SCU of cargo. So if you're rolling with smaller ships, this ship will be able to store some of your officially gotten or not so legitimately gotten gains. And it has prisoner pod storage for the bounty hunter role and a proper armory. So an actual room devoted to those type of storage of weapons and suits. So this is kind of putting it into a span of what are you looking for out of your ship. And once again, the crew that did the original Cutter and the Cutter Rambler and the Cutter Scout are the crew that are making these Zeuses. I have confidence in their ability to put specializations into these ships, and they're not afraid to make a ship sacrifice things to really fulfill the niche. It's not just painted a different color without a paint on it, of course, and changing the fuels tank size slightly and saying, "Oh, and now it's an Explorer," or now it's for not for combat and it's for this. These ships seem to be tailored towards actual roles, and they are going to be demanding on players that need to understand these are not solo ships, at least most of the time. I think the first that will really shine that ability and show the need for at least two players on board will be the MR in order to activate its quantum dampeners EMP. If we look at the Antares, if we look at the Antares' build on the Scorp series, it requires a second person, nicknamed this the Netflix seat, to press the button to activate its systems. This will almost guaranteed be the same scenario where the pilot cannot activate the EMP or the quantum dampener. Additionally, on the CL, it should be noted that there is a remote tractor beam. Now, for those who are rolling their eyes going, I can operate by myself, yes, you can. Absolutely can. But it's going to be much easier for you if you don't have to hop out of the pilot seat and jump over to a tractor beam operator seat or a co pilot seat that can activate the tractor beam and then try to figure that out. And then your ship is just sitting there like a duck until you hop back in the other seat. It'll be more efficient to have two players. Additionally, taking care of the cargo, checking on it, especially if you're working with rare cargoes, cargoes that could explode, maybe checking for stowaways, those type of things. Or if you have a PvP or attack you, or a PvE pirate attack you, being able to repair things while you haul on out of there. So I think that's another ship that will show a two-player capacity will be important. Additionally, on the ES is the same deal to operate the turret. So there is, I think, something for everyone in these ships, as long as you are either willing to accept the risks of operating alone or you're willing to at least find one friend to roll around with, you're going to have a great time. I think these ships are perfect if you have those friends that kind of come into the game patch by patch, roll around, have a good time, maybe consider buying their own ship and never quite do it, or they have their ship on their one ship on the insurance and they're waiting for it. You can just tell them, "Hey, I'm going to spawn a Zeus. Let's go roll around, have a good time." I think that's this is the kind of ship for you if you're in that circumstance. I don't think it's a Connie killer. I'm really kind of tired of hearing that. They're their own gameplay, all three of these vessels, and in particular, trying to stick to the topic of the CL and the ES. I think that they both have a place in the verse, and they will be great ships. But the other ships will enjoy passes when they get them that will make them comparable, if not better, in certain roles, because these are hyper niching ships too. Whereas the Connies always tend to err on the side of versatility, these ships are kind of niching down into their role, or they are niching down into their roles, even cutting walls down and resizing the rooms just to make use of it and taking services on and off based on the needs of what your mission type is. There's something to be said for that. And if you have a fleet that's a little bit bigger, at least a couple ships to choose from, it might be a good idea to niche into one of these Zeuses. If not, you may want to really look hard and consider what you're going to give up ship-wise for these kind of more dedicated gameplay loop ships that these Zeuses tend to be. And this may be the signal that CIG is kind of going that direction with modern ships, where they will be more hyper niche and they will be able to roll around. But they're going to focus more on a specific gameplay. And players are going to have to think about that carefully before they move on with the process of CCUing out of another ship or melting another ship, than buying one of these niche ships and then they're kind of stuck in that gameplay loop. And if that patch cycle doesn't have that gameplay, or the player makes some new friends, or joins a new org and discovers, oh, I'm more into PvP now, or oh, I'm more into logistics and hauling now, and I really would have preferred blank. Uh, you're going, as you rise up the CCU chain, you have less and less options. So just bear all that in mind when you're considering things. Don't just jump on the hype train completely when a new ship comes out. Think about it carefully of how this is going to feel in your hands in a couple months. How is this ship going to roll for you in the next couple patches? And how is this going to build yourself into pyro exploration or pyro avoiding for other players? And if you're going to focus on hauling to the nearby station and let everyone else shoot it out over there, is the CL for you for that type of operation? So there's a few things, there's a few hidden things here, and I'm very excited for these ships. I'm glad I could finally put something together on them. This is my first look, my first thoughts. So please forgive the roughness of the cuts, and I'm just like you all. I admire the beauty of these ships. There's no contest there. RSI put out a fantastic vessel, and I would say that this does honor the original Zeus. I guess I'm going to wrap this up with a little bit of lore. Don't run away too fast. But the first ship that went into space that was able to be the everyman's breaking into space was the Zeus. And with this ship heralding in the Zeus Mk2, it's carrying a pretty weighty title. So in the lore of StarCitizen, the Zeus was the first RSI ship built for short-range exploration, and was able to be the everyman ship to get into space and go distances. And the Zeus Mk2 is one of the first ships, maybe, that will be exploring Pyro properly. Not in a tech preview, not in some super secret internal testing or Evo testing, but actually in players' hands, being able to go through the jump point. I think it's very fitting that if Pyro comes out about the same time as the Zeus, that'd be kind of neat. The Zeus Mk2 breaking new ground into a new system, just like the original Zeus broke new ground into other solar systems, expanding the reach of man. All right, that's going to do it for me. Once again, thank you to my long-term subscribers for sticking around and putting up with me. And please consider subscribing if you haven't already. It really means a lot. All right, take care.